Hey everyone, it's Matt here with the IGN Nintendo team, and I've got the video review for Okami.
The critically acclaimed Okami started its life on PlayStation 2 about 2 years ago, and Wii owners like myself have really wanted it on this system ever since. It's perfectly suited for Nintendo's console, and frankly, I'm really glad it's finally here. If you really like Twilight Princess, or if you really like Zelda games in general, I think you're going to be really pleased with what Okami brings to the table. It is, like Twilight Princess, an epic adventure game, filled with quests, filled with challenges, filled with combat, and there's just so much to do and see that you're going to be kept busy for hours and hours. Really, dozens of hours. The game will run you about 30 plus, at the very least. You star as Amaterasu, a goddess/wolf charged with the task of restoring peace and prosperity to the ancient Japanese landscapes. As you can see in the videos here, Okami features this very stylized, very beautiful presentation, inspired by Japanese woodcutting, watercoloring, and of course a mix of cel shading thrown in for good measure. I think the effect is just phenomenal. I really do love the art direction in this game. I just find it to be so brave and so different, and it just works on so many levels. No matter what you're doing, where you are, you can potentially pause the screen and everything will look so good that you'd basically have a painting. Okami was already a stunning game on PlayStation 2, and it looks even better on Wii thanks to the fact that you now get a 480p mode, so the game runs in progressive scan, and in addition to that you get a 16:9 widescreen mode, and like I said, it just makes a game that already looked very good even better. Not everything has seen improvement though. You had this paper filter in the PS2 version, which really brought the look together of the game. That is less pronounced in the Wii version, and I think that's disappointing. The bigger disappointment though is that developer Ready at Dawn hasn't really mucked around with the frame rate, and so you had that sluggish fluidity in the PS2 version. The same is true with the Wii version. When you hit those wide open environments with lots of, say, trees and people, you're going to see some slowdown, and I'm not talking 60 to 30, I'm talking 30 and below. Most of the time, though, the game does run pretty smoothly, and even when it does hiccup here and there, I think you're going to be okay with it, just because there's so much going on, there's so much to do in this overworld. I think most people would agree with me that Okami feels very much like Zelda. I keep making that point, but it's true, and in fact, the director of Okami has even stated publicly that he's been very much influenced by Nintendo's franchise over the years. To that end, you have this massive overworld, which is so huge it stretches as far as the eye can see in every direction. You have this main character who starts out with some abilities, but has to build them as she goes and gets stronger and stronger, at which point she can access new areas, gain more items, and advance the storyline. It's very much like Zelda. But Okami actually succeeds on some levels where Twilight Princess doesn't. Specifically, I find the story to be far more compelling, the character is much more interesting, and also Okami is a game with a sense of humor, and I think you're going to laugh a lot as you play through it. On top of that, I think some of the level designs and the connection between the overworld flows a little nicer in Okami. For example, in Twilight Princess you have the overworld, and then you have villages, and then you have dungeons. And in Okami, that distinction isn't so black and white. As you explore the countryside, you may encounter something that feels like a dungeon, but it's not really announced to you. You're not really sure until you're halfway through, say, and you know that you're completing those dungeon-esque-like challenges. It's just a little more seamless. The world itself is ginormous and extremely varied, so you will have beaches, you will have forests, you will have caves, everything in between, including those dungeon-esque environments. And everything is just so beautiful that you will stop and you will probably gape at it. Of course, combat plays a big part in Okami, just like Twilight Princess, and I think, if you didn't like the waggle in Twilight Princess, you're probably not going to like the waggle in Okami either, because it's very similar. That being said, I find that combat works pretty well with the Wii Remote. You just shake the peripheral to deal out attacks while fighting, and you can string together combos too if your timing is just right. Unfortunately though, not everything's working perfectly, and case in point, you have a dodge maneuver mapped to the nunchuck, and that only works about half the time, if that, and you can see in this video as I try it. Up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right. How many times did that work correctly? 0. I think it's important to note though that dodge maneuver is not standard. You can buy it if you want to, however it's not necessary to complete the game. Still, given the choice, I would take Okami on Wii for a few reasons, and I'll tell you why. 1, 480p, 2, 16:9 widescreen, and 3, the brush techniques. Handled with the Wii Remote, they're just so much better than using a traditional controller, and I frankly cannot go back to an analog stick. Playing Okami with the PS2 was a slow, meticulous process when you wanted to draw on screen with the brush, because you were, limited to the speed of the analog stick. With the Wii Remote, you're going to find yourself busting out moves so quickly, you're going to be able to use it in combat more effectively, and even the process of solving puzzles is going to be sped up because of this. And because the Celestial Brush plays such an important part in the game, you will use it all the time. Whether you're drawing the sun in the sky, bringing the moon down, drawing bombs, drawing slices through environments or enemies, or just using it effectively in combat, using wind, doing whatever you have to do to defeat the enemy. I think showing you some video here is just going to prove to you beyond any doubt how well it all works, so if you would, just take a moment and watch some of this footage. Bear in mind, you're not just going to be using these brushes to solve basic puzzles and fight basic enemies. You are going to square off against huge, epic bosses too. And, just keep looking at this footage for a few examples. Okami really successfully emulates that Zelda experience, both the good and the bad. Speaking of the bad, though, there is the frame rate issue here and there where it's jumpy, and I mentioned that before, but you've also got load times. So if you're going from the hub world to some of the other areas, you'll get up to a 10-second load, which really breaks the momentum. And on top of that, the adventure itself definitely features some annoying fetch quests, which I know will turn some gamers off. Even with a few complaints, though, Okami definitely arrives on Wii as a welcomed addition to the library. That's a fantastic game all through, and I think anybody who likes Zelda, anybody who likes those adventures, would be doing themselves a great disservice to ignore it now.
Okami's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend the game. For our full written review, check out IGN.com.